Happy Mother's Day for all of us, because we've all mothered something, right? For all of us. So would everybody just stand to be acknowledged for Mother's Day, because we've all mothered something into expression, and just welcome that into our hearts. So I invite us to just invite us to just be with that, and to know that we've all mothered something into that expression. So please give yourself a standing ovation. Today we're going to shift and lift. Everybody ready to shift and lift? And I thought it was synchronicity when we picked out, there was a butterfly that was available to give to everyone who's a mother. And no matter if you have birth children or whatever, just to give that. And then there was also this slide, and we hadn't coordinated the two, but I love how the universe just coordinates that, much like jelly sandwiches and crowns. So there's synchronicity as we shift and lift in our lives. And a couple of years ago, I had traveled to Big Sky Retreat in Montana, where about 100 people gathered together who are New Thought, Ageless Wisdom people. And they've been doing this for about 40 years. And so there was musical inspiration. The keynote in September is going to be Jean Houston, who's a leader in the Human Potential Movement. And so she's actually the one who did the introduction to the Science of Mind textbook, the most recent version, and the Science of Mind is a guide for spiritual living. Jane, would you mind toning it down a little bit? Thanks. Not that we want to tone down our lives, we want to shift and lift up our lives. So I journeyed to be with Mother Nature in Montana, and I journeyed to Mother Earth in Yellowstone. And so we have Mother Nature, we have Mother Earth, and when I was in Yellowstone, the forest ranger told this story about how they were hiking up, and it was after some of the fires that were there, and they found a bird that had its wings wide open, and it was no longer with us, but the chicks were. And the mother had all the wherewithal to protect her young'uns, and had the foresight, and it was just so moving that the mother knew about the impending disaster and was able to guard and protect her young'uns. And it totally touches my heart anytime I see birds like that, and to know that there's the Mother Nature that just has that intuition and knows what to do. She had carried her offspring to the base of a tree, and so she knew to carry them there, and knew to protect them and to have that winged protection. And so even though what had scorched her small body, she remained steadfast. And it's the mother's love. It's a representation for me of a mother's love, that when the blaze had arrived, that the mother had remained steadfast. She knew what mothering was about. And our mothers, they had held that idea in consciousness, not just a thought, but a realization of the truth that someone could be cared for, much like the bird who had protected her young ones. And she had remained steadfast, and because she was willing to provide cover, her young'uns could live. So we all have that nurturing aspect as we move from, maybe we've been enduring something, maybe we've been persevering something, enduring, persevering, and then we can move into being nurturing. We can move, and knowing that we have that motherly love, no matter if we're male or female, we have that divine feminine, or that balance and harmony that we bring as a nurturing presence. In the Lamsa translation of Psalms 94:1, he says, "He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall trust." And what that mother bird did was trusted, and she knew that her young'uns would survive and thrive. And Mother's Day is a wonderful opportunity for us to shift and lift our lives, to know that we too have wings and can fly. And we have this wonderful opportunity to, in essence, glorify and honor and just give a celebration to that mother principle of spirit, to that balance that we bring, and knowing that there's motherhood in our physical lives, and that there's motherhood, or the hood of being a mother, in our spiritual lives. And today, yeah, I'll get a little personal with you and reveal a little bit about my mom, she was kind of like Annie Mame. Did anyone ever remember Rosalind Russell, you know? So my mom, art, yeah, refrigerator art. So she was a big fan of Georgia O'Keeffe. And so I grew up with a saying on the refrigerator that says, "Nobody sees a flower really. It's so small. We haven't time, and to see takes time. Sometimes we get to make time, some quality time. Like a friend, like to have a friend, to have and cherish and love a friend takes time. Like to have a family member takes time." And so on our refrigerator was Georgia O'Keeffe's art. And when my mom and my Aunt Jill, and my mom Midge, because she was a tiny little thing, Midge. That was her nickname. Wasn't her real name. She was actually named after someone in a book that was Marjorie and had the correct spelling of Marjory, but she went by Midge. And she would play in Dr. Ernest Holmes' chair at Junior Church, because that's where at Founders, when Dr. Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of the Science of Mind, which is a guide for spiritual living, that's where they held the Junior Church, right there on 6th Street. And so he was speaking to thousands of people at the Wiltern Theater at the time. And I kind of just grew up in a positive way of living with Science of Mind magazine and Daily Word on the breakfast table, with a kind of a gratitude practice in the evening. And she loved the movie Affair to Remember. She also evidently loved Rosalind Russell, but maybe Rosalind loved her more. I don't know, but it was kind of wild. We had this iced tea stand on our patio so that people could just come by. It was like this open invitation. She had a very warm, welcoming presence where the postman could come by, the neighbors could come by, and she would make homemade iced tea and have this iced tea stand where anyone could just come by. And we also had a thing called Kids Week, because people like to come to where we live, and it was really nice to live in a place where people wanted to come. But she didn't want them coming throughout the whole summer, like every week with their backpack. Hey, we're here. So she had a thing called Kids Week, where all of her friends would send the kids. And so there we would be cooking for the Asian Army. We would be cooking for the Asian Army and have this whole big slumber party. And then when they got tired of us, they'd send us down the street, and they'd give us a box of Cracker Jack. You get the toy in the middle, and open up the thing of Cracker Jack. Go ahead and go to Cracker Jack Point, they'd say. Go to Cracker Jack Point and have fun. So there was some ebb and flow in that Kids Week, and we would have so much fun. And really, the Rosalind Russell thing about Auntie Mame is my mom would really say, life is a banquet. You know, life is a banquet. Just open up the house. So with the iced tea stand, with the Kids Week, she also had all kinds of groups of people. Go figure, is groups of people. She had like the lunch bunch, this one group. She had another group called Separate Checks, because they would go to a restaurant and they'd order separate checks. And then she had all these kinds of sister friends. So she had like all these wonderful inner circle and outer circle of friends. And so my mom was a good friend. Later in life, after my dad had passed, we became really good friends, and we traveled the world. We got to travel the world together and meet and greet all kinds of people. And before that, we had gone to Hawaii. So in the summertime, I grew up in Hawaii just during the summertime, because both my folks were teachers. And when Georgia O'Keeffe says, when you take a flower in your hand and really look at it, it's your world for that moment, to see the world in a flower. And what Georgia O'Keeffe says is, I want to give that world to someone else. And it's a wonderful world. Wonderful. And we all have that wonderfulness that's inside of us. And even my father, one day in our yard, was climbing a tree. And he was trimming a tree. And he would whistle. What a wonderful world. He would also whistle like 80 days, Around the World in 80 Days? And so my neighbor leaned over one day, and he said, my neighbor says, do you know some other repertoire? Do you know some other songs? And my folks were so great about learning and education, and I'm very, she, on our refrigerator, does anyone have a refrigerator? I'm grateful for them to have been in my life. I'm very grateful. I had it, they would pretty much let me do all kinds of creative projects, and so for a while I had a dark room. And remember the dark rooms where you'd have the chemicals, and what's beautiful is last week I talked a little bit about photography, and you take a picture of something wonderful. So you have the subject, and then look at the light quality on the photograph, and then to look at how the design is. And if we think about that in terms of our lives, what we do is we find that subject that we're most interested in. We find that the truth that wants to be realized in our life. And then we had this shack out by past the yard that I'd turned into the dark room, sealed it all up. And what I would do is I would submerge that film. So I'd capture that subject with that light quality and design in the photography, unlike digital now. And then we'd shake it up in the chemicals, just knowing with all the faith and all the trust in the world that that subject would just come to light. And so in the darkroom, there's something that got submerged, and then there's something that emerged. And if we look at that as far as our meditation life, if we look at that in terms of our prayer life, that we submerge, we go on an inner journey, and then we emerge and have that out picture in our life in a glorious way. So in Psalm 139, verse 2, it says, "The darkness shall not be dark to thee." So when I went to the dark room, I just trusted and I knew that what was submerged would emerge. And that the night shines as the day. And the darkness and the light are alike to thee. And it sounds like kind of the middle way too, that as we know we have that balance, we know that there's value in what that darkness, that dark room brought. Because there was something that was coming to fruition, much like when we plant an avocado seed, and I love avocados. We trust and know that we're going to have that delicious salad filled with avocados and just nurture that, much like the motherly place that we are, and to know that we are mothering and nurturing that. And when I know that when I have people over, so I'm turning into my mom a little bit. I cook for the Asian Army. I find myself cooking a lot. Not really cooking, but pouring a really good bag of salad. And I've worked with a lot of families. I've done a lot of best interests of kids kinds of things, and I have all kinds of wonderful friends and people in my life. So have all that kind of nurturing and extended family types of things. My mom, Midge, when she was rounding up her days here, and we got to celebrate her life. She had wanted, before we were to celebrate her life, and not that we weren't always celebrating, but to just honor her coming to fruition and just having had that experience here on this plane, she wanted to go on a steamboat. So I took her on a steamboat, and she got to explore jazz. She got to study jazz and just have that music that she so loved in her heart with a big window. And so we traveled. We just kept traveling together. And she was a private tutor for many, many years. And I think she just tutored self-esteem. It may have been called reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it looked like self-esteem. And at her celebration, this young man who I had seen grow up from this high, because she tutored from kindergarten through college, self-esteem. He had grown up from here to, clear up Wilt Chamberlain size. And he said, "Had I not known your mom, I would not be the same person that I am today." And if we think about the impact that I have goosebumps, if we think about the impact that we have in people's lives, that as we know that, like Georgia O'Keeffe, that we can make time and be a friend. We can make time and have the motherly love. We can make time and have that fatherly love. When I traveled, so my quest for a little wanderlust, I would travel, and I had some spiritual travel programs that I helped with in Peru, and last Friday had seen a movie about wisdom keepers. And so they shared their wisdom. And these people who I traveled with, they were related to the Incas, and they're called the Q'ero and in Peru. And they don't even have to ask how you are. It's like they see you. They see who you are. Much like George O'Keeffe says, to actually see someone. They would make time. They walked barefoot for about 6 days to then hop on our bus and travel with us. And it was so beautiful to see that they have the same language that we have here for positive living, and that they too talk about harmony. They too talk about love. They talk about kindness. They talk about initiating, having that initiation of presence. They also talk about one of our core principles, which is reciprocity. They call it Aini, and that's that energetic flow, and to be in that flow of that harmony of the universe, that reciprocity and that energy that's flowing. And so there's that indigenous wisdom that Dr. Ernest Holmes, our founder, had pulled up and synthesized in our philosophy, so it's a way of life. And in Inca mythology, it also talks about Mother Earth. It talks about the Pachamama, who we can bring that Mother Nature and that Mother Earth experience into our life. And the Pachamama is a fertility goddess who presides over planting and harvesting. So whatever we're planting and harvesting in our life, she is ever present, and she is self-sufficient. She is creative. Sound like a mom? Self-sufficient and creative. And she has the power to sustain life on this earth. She's benevolent, and she's giving. So the Q'ero people, they actually know who you are, and they make time how to see. And we too can make time how to see in our lives. We can shift, and we can lift that which is not working for us, whether it's something in our health, whether we're experiencing and we need a little more sleep, whether we need a little more exercise, whether we're a little bit thirsty or hungry in whatever area, whether we're experiencing a flow in our finances that wants to be unleashed and turn that faucet on even more. Whether it's in our relationships, and we're going to have, I'll stay tuned for this, we're going to have some pointers on relationship and how to have even more powerful and positive emotions, and leave with that today in our basket. So the father of positive psychology, Dr. Martin Seligman, talks about a handful, less than a handful of elements actually, less than a handful. He talks about, and he's authored several books, Learned Optimism, Authentic Happiness, and Flourish. Sounds like I'd like some of that, right? I'd like a little more of that. And he invites us to experience, and he has an acronym for this, it's called PERMA. In his latest book, Flourish, he talks about, and he articulated what makes well-being. So if we look in terms of this way that we're nurturing in our lives, that we're expanding our experience of that mothering in our lives, of that Mother Earth, of what we submerge that idea. We know that as it's planted and nourished, it can flourish. Hey, as it's nourished, it can flourish. Don't you love it? I never know what's going to pop out sometimes. As we nourish, it's going to flourish. So knowing that we can shift and uplift that in our lives. So he talks about four elements that make a meaningful life. To have positive emotion. He talks about engagement, to have a flow, have a positive state of flow. Anyone ever had experienced flow where you've kind of just lost yourself? Yeah, you've kind of just lost yourself in an activity. And it's that divine energy that just goes forth as we emerge, and knowing that that energy permeates us. If you've ever been in the flow of life, you know that it could be as a mother, you're laughing with your children, not at your children, but you're laughing with your children or with some friends and some family members. You know, when you can't stop laughing, you know, you just get it gets going, and it's like it's inspired. It could be that a friend of mine had worked on the New York Stock Exchange, and when he would step out on that floor and there'd be all that energy, he would just lose himself in that energy, and so he was totally engaged in what he was doing, and he was providing a service for other people so that they could thrive. It could be that baseball players, it's spring training, right? Baseball players who just reach up and they catch that fly ball, or that I've always wanted to sit. Now, if you sit over here, you might be able to catch the fly ball. I always try and get the tickets where you can catch the fly ball, because that's like so much fun. But that inspired action of just being one with the air and one with the ball, having a ball, that's that inspired action, that engagement, that presence of an in-flow state, that presence of being in the flow. And then Martin Seligman goes on, he talks about relationships. When we have the presence of friends, when we have the presence of family, when we have intimacy, and then when we experience even deeper connection, we can trust that we're in the flow. And knowing that we have meaning, too, that maybe meaning is the most important topic. Maybe it's the most important experience, that we have meaning in our lives. Not just pleasure. You would think that some people would just say, yes, it's about pleasure. Pleasure with family on this day, Mother's Day. But it could be more about meaning, having a meaningful conversation. It could be about belonging, and it could be about serving something larger or bigger than ourselves. Realizing that we're a part of the whole. That there's something that reaches from our inward journey where we submerge, and then we emerge in those relationships, in that connection. And that as we reach for that inner journey, we know that it serves something greater. So we reach for that inner journey and know that that's submerging, and then we emerge, and then we shift and uplift our lives. It could be that accomplishments, too, when there's nothing in the way, there's absolutely the knowingness that there's nothing in the way, that it's beyond limits. And one of the people in our Beyond Limits class said that, my prayer life has shifted. And for all of us to have that experience that my life has shifted. To know that I'm feeling a lot lighter, a lot brighter, and that I can shift and uplift, shift and lift. So Martin Seligman invites us to do just a handful of things. You can try one, test drive one if you want this week. You can share it with your family this afternoon. Number one is to design a beautiful life in your mind, much like that photograph in the darkroom. Design a beautiful day. And then to use savoring and mindfulness to enjoy it to the fullest. Think about, in fact, just take a minute. Take a minute if you want to just close your eyes and design a beautiful day. Something that you can just submerge in and emerge as something beautiful. Something that can be shifted and lifted. And just know what that is for you in your heart, to design a beautiful day. And knowing that absolutely, you can open your eyes now if you want, that absolutely has that pleasure aspect or those positive emotions in that. Number two, we can do a gratitude visit. If you've ever felt so grateful for someone and never had the opportunity to thank them properly, you don't have to write hundreds of words, but if you want to write a testimonial to them, write a little letter, might be a little card, might be 300 words, and then schedule a visit, even if it's out of state, or a Skype, schedule a visit and read them the testimonial, a gratitude visit. And what results from that is both people are even more empowered, nurtured and empowered from that. So I want you to close your eyes again and remember a time when you felt someone had really shared something with you or done something for you, for which you're very grateful. That person has to be alive. And then now think of that testimonial that you want to write. And then what you'll do is you just call or phone them and then go to their town. So can you imagine just showing up and knocking on their door and having a gratitude visit? Being so grateful for something that someone had done. And another tool, too, is that we can know our strengths, and we can continue to know our strengths and our gifts. And you can create, much like designing a beautiful day, create a strengths day with someone that you love. Create and play up your strengths. Maybe whether that's going to see some music, whether that's to see a movie, whether that's just to listen, to just be there, have a cup of tea. Tea and sympathy sometimes, tea and empathy. So to know that you can have a strengths day and realize what your top, let's say 5 strengths are about yourself and about another, and then combine that and have a really positive day. And to know that we can shift and lift. Know that that's an opportunity to get out of whatever the condition or the circumstance is, of whatever that relationship is, and to set an intent to play up the strengths in that relationship. So you can shift and lift and show up. So there's one more thing, is that you can do something fun and philanthropic, and we're already doing that right here. We know that there's something fun and philanthropic happening, that it lasts. There's something that lasts. There's the opportunity. And I see a lot of people smiling that they're thinking of their Strengths Day already. That's a great thing, or the beautiful day. And so to have someone say to us that I would not be the same person had I not known you. And to just imagine that, and to live as that. And to know that we can shift and lift our relationships and move in that positive emotion, knowing that we're totally engaged, knowing that we're fully alive in that. And we are fully alive as we nourish and flourish. So let's turn within for a moment of inner celebration and just know that yes, we are nourished and flourished. We are absolutely loved and cherished in this moment. In celebrating this day, knowing that there is the mothering and nurturing aspect of Mother Nature, of Mother Earth, knowing that there is this spiritual being which desires to be fully expressed, and that in this realm of infinite possibility and flourishing, knowing that there is that which is so beautiful, it is a beautiful day, and declaring it to be so. In this beauty, in this aliveness, in this love, in this kindness, in this reaching inward, and then reaching outward. There is the inward journey, and then bringing that and the out picturing, and knowing that there is a unified field of this infinite spirit in celebration. And I know that there is celebrating in our hearts, a heart filled with love, with joy, with the pure essence, the divine essence, which is so beautiful and true, and knowing that it is good in this very moment, and moving together in the strengths and the gifts of these days, of this absolute beautiful day, and sharing that nurturing and nourishing place of the Mother Nature, of the place from the womb, knowing that there is that which is created out of this beautiful place of love, of the infinite, of the nourishing presence. So I'm grateful knowing that there is fulfillment, there is the satisfaction, there is that which is so loving and kind and true. And I invite us to shift and lift, and to be uplifted, and knowing that there is this word which carries forward, knowing it is much like a seed that is planted and grows and is nurtured and flourishes in this very moment. And so be it, and so it is.